we were talking about the evolution of Jagat, which was being presented in 4 stages. Let me mute you all. And we looked at the first stage, which was the Panchabhuta Srishti, the evolution of the subtle 5 elements from the beginningless Maya blessed by Brahman. And then we looked at the second stage, where these subtle 5 elements produced various subtle bodies, like which was the Shushma Bhautikani. So from the Vyashti Sattvic aspect of the 5 elements, the 5 Gyanindriyas were born. From the Samashti Sattvic aspect of the 5 elements, the Antakarna was born, the inner instrument, which includes the mind, the Buddhi, intellect, Buddhi or intellect, Chitta and Hamkara. And from the Vyashti Rajasic aspect, the 5 Karmindriyas were born. And from the Samashti Rajasic aspect, the Prana was born. So now we will be entering the third stage, which is the Stula Bhuta Srishti, which is the evolution of this physical gross world that you see, including your body. And they are called the Stula Bhutani. So in the tamasic, now we are left with the tamasic guna, right? So we are looking at the evolution of the tamasic aspect from which this tangible world comes to be. So at the end of your page 16, we will chant. Etesham panchatattvanam
Etesham panchatattvanam
tamasham sat tamasha. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's interrupting.
Oh, okay. Check. Okay, let me try. Otherwise, I have one more internet I can switch to. Tamasam shat.
Tamasam
shat.
Panchikrita panchatatvani bhavanti.
Panchikrita panchatatvani bhavanti.
Panchikaranam tat katamiti chet.
Panchikaranam katam iti chet.
Etesham panchabhutanam
Etesham panchabhutanam
tamasam swarupaham
tamasancha swarupam
ekamekam bhutam
ekam bhutam
dvida vibhajya
dvidha vibhajya
ekamekam
ekam ardham
pritak tushnim
pritak tushni
vyavastapya
vyavastapya
aparamapamardham
aparamapardham
chaturtha vibhajya
chaturva vibhajya
Vardhamaneshu ardeshu
swardhamaneshu ardheshu
Svabhaga chatushtaya samshayojanam
svabhaga chatushta sanyojanam
karyam
कार्यं
तदा panchikaranam bhavati.
तदा पञ्चीभवति।
Okay, thank you. Let me know if the net is too flaky, then I'll change to the other one. Right? So the first line says, from the tamasic aspect of the subtle five elements, the five grossified elements are formed. These are called pancha tattvas. So how do they become grossified? How do these invisible become visible? The author anticipates the question and answers, Panchikaranam katamiti chet. This is the process of grossification, which is called Panchikaranam. So my internet is stalling. Let me switch. I might briefly get disconnected. Okay, am I back now? Hi, am I back now? Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
That the first line says, from the tamasic aspect of these five subtle elements, the five grossified elements are formed. And the process of how these invisible become the visible is called the process of panchikaranam. Right? So I will share one image to make this more understandable. So, yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we said from Brahman plus Maya, we had the five Panchabhutas which came, and now we covered what happens to the sattvic aspect and what happens to the rajasic aspect, and now we're coming to the tamasic aspect, right? And so in the first stage, it just shows that the tanmatras are in their original form. So we have the subtle akasha, we have the subtle vayu, the subtle agni, the subtle apa, and subtle prithvi as it is. Yeah. So in the second step, what's happening is just the tamasic aspect of this subtle space is being divided into two. Okay, so same with the air, fire, water, and earth element. Each of them are just being divided into two. That's the second stage. And the third stage, can you see my cursor moving when I do this? Okay. So in the yes. So in the third stage, this split which has been done is being separated, right? So half of space is shown in black and half of it is shown in white. So this first half remains intact. Nothing happens to the first half, and just the second half is for now separated. Okay. And then in the fourth stage, this second half, which was separated, it's being divided into 4. Okay. So what is each of these white elements are now what? They are 1/8, right? Because the half became 4. So each of these white are 1/8 of the Akasha element. Okay. So similarly, the same thing happens with air, fire, water, and all. So we make 4 1/8 parts of each of these. And then in the final stage, what happens is this half of Akasha, which was originally there, stays as it, and with this gets combined 1/8 of air, 1/8 of fire, 1/8 of water, and 1/8 of the earth element. You see, Akasha is there, and 2, 3, 4, 5, which are coming from air, fire, water, earth. 1/8 of them are getting added to the space element. And this makes the Stula Akasha. Okay, is it clear so far? And the same thing happens with the air element. The one half of the air element, the black portion, remains as is. And to this one half, 1/8 of space is added, 1/8 of Agni is added, 1/8 of Apaha is added, and 1/8 of Prithvi is added. So this makes the Stula Vayu, the gross air element. So the gross air element has half of air, subtle air element, and it has 1/8 of the other 4. And similarly, Stula Agni is formed, and Stula Apaha is formed, and Stula Prithvi is formed. Any confusion in that? Perfect. So that is the evolution of the 5 grossified elements. I will also share this picture with you later on. So, and the rest of these lines we read, I won't translate line for line, but they were explaining that each of these steps that we talked about. And so then the author says, let's chant at the end of your page 17. Etebhyah
Etebhyah
Panchīkrita Panchamahābhūtebhyah
Panchīkrita Panchamahabhūtebhyah
Stūla Shariram Bhavati
Sthula Shariram Bhavati
Evam Pinda Brahmandayoho
Evam Pindam Brahmandayoho
Aikyam Sambhūtam.
Aikyam Sambhūtam.
So, one second. So the author is now saying, Etebhya, from these, Panchikrita Panchamahai Bhutehi, the 5 elements which have undergone the process of grossification, Stula Shariram, the gross body, Bhavati, is formed. So this is the process of grossification, which was Panchikaranam. The gross, from these 5 elements, the gross body is formed. Evam, in this manner, Pinda Brahmandayoho, between the Pinda, the microcosm, and Brahmanda, the macrocosm, Aikyam, identity, Sambhutam is born. So basically, the author is pointing out that the macrocosm, the whole Shrishti that we see, and the microcosm, this physical Sthula body that you see, they're both born of the same 5 elements. The same 5 gross elements are responsible for the formation of this physical body. So they're responsible for the formation of your physical body and also the entire physical universe. That is why this physical universe is called Prapancha, because it's made of the 5 elements. And because both are made from the same 5 elements, you can see there is an identity between the two. There is no difference. There is an identity between the bodies. And we call the individual body the Pinda, and the cosmic body, the cosmos, we call Brahmanda. And we already said when we were talking about the evolution that the elements are not different from Brahman. All of them are born from Brahman with Maya, so which has undergone certain changes. So everything, therefore, is Brahman only. Everything that you see, including your body, is Brahman alone. This is the 4th stage, which is the Sthula Bhautika Shrishti. So in the 3rd stage, your Sthula elements were born, the Sthula 5 elements were born, and in the final stage, from these elements, the Sthula Bhuta Shrishti is formed. So we are not going into the details of how these 5 gross elements make the entire physical universe and this physical body. We're not going into the technicalities of all that. That is due to the intelligent design of Ishvara. So for now, the 4th stage, you can just accept as by combining the 5 gross elements, the gross bodies are formed. So one important point for us to note here is that everything is made from Ishvara or Brahman with Maya, the same consciousness. So when we say something is inert, like a rock, a table, etc., or that is inert, or we say something is sentient, like a human or an animal is sentient, we are only talking about the ability of this medium to reflect consciousness, right? Because what is Brahman? Brahman is consciousness. So when we say everything is Brahman, everything that you see, inert or sentient, is Brahman, this consciousness. So why do certain objects appear sentient, like you and me, and others, like the chair you're sitting on, appear inert, jada? It's because of the Sukshma Shariram. Because the Sukshma Shariram has that ability to reflect the consciousness. So when we we cannot appreciate consciousness in an inert object, it is only because it's lacking a Sukshma Shariram, and hence by lacking the ability to reflect that consciousness. Right? So that's an important thing to remember for us. So with this, we looked at the evolution, which was represented in 4 stages, right? So the first stage was Panchabhuta Shrishti, which was the formation of your subtle 5 elements. If you remember, from the beginningless Maya, the subtle 5 elements were born. And because the cause Maya has 3 gunas, the karyam, the products, these subtle 5 elements, also have the 3 gunas. First, the space or akasha was created, the subtle space or akasha, and from it vayu, from it agni, from it jala, and from it prithvi. And in the second stage, these subtle 5 elements gave rise to various subtle bodies, the Sukshma Bhautikani. which were the products of these subtle five elements and formed from their combination. So Bhautikani means the product. And in the third stage, we looked at the Stula Bhuta Srishti, the evolution of the physical and five gross elements through the process of Panchikaranam, that table that you looked at. And in the fourth stage, we're saying that the five gross elements will give rise to all the physical bodies that you see, all your bodies and all these things that we see in Srishti. So this was the entire process of evolution. And with this, we've completed three main topics of Tattva Bodha. The first was Adhikari. The second was analysis of the individual. And the third is this creation. Now, when all this evolution is happening, what is happening to Brahman? What is happening to the consciousness principle? We have to remember that absolutely nothing is happening to the consciousness principle. Just like the sun, if you take the example of the sun, blessed by the sun, so many activities happen around the earth, right? So things get heated, plants are growing, we are getting nourished. Under the blessing of the sun, so many things are happening, but the sun itself is changeless. Atma like this is changeless. It is also formless and attributeless. From here, we will enter the fourth topic of Aikyam, oneness. What is the essence of this microcosm and the macrocosm that we've been looking at? We will see that it is the same. The essence of the wave is water, and the essence of ocean is also water. That's Aikyam. Recognition of this oneness is the core topic of Tattva Bodha. And indeed, it is the core topic of all your Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutra and everything that you study in Vedanta. And the author concludes the topic of Srishti saying, Evam Pindandam Brahmandam Sambhutam. The identity of both is the same. Both are made of the same five elements, and hence, actually, both are jada, inert, like the five elements. Whatever consciousness we perceive actually belongs to Brahman alone. All these other elements are only you and I, when you and I in these bodies, when we appear sentient or conscious, it's only because of the reflection. Any questions in this before we enter the next topic?
Can you explain the last line once more? Pinda Brahmanda.
So Pinda is
Does it-
the microcosm, which refers to the Jiva, and Brahmanda is the macrocosm, the universe. So basically in the second, in the second portion of Tattva Bodha, we did the Vyashti Vichara, right? We looked at what exactly is this microcosm, what is Jivatma, and we looked at the Stula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram, and the Karana Shariram, right? And then we looked at the same microcosm in different formats. We looked at it through the three states of awareness, and we looked at it through the 5 sheets. So that was all the analysis of the microcosm. And in the third stage, when we looked at creation of this universe, we were looking at the macro cosm, right? So what is this Jagat? What is Ishvara? And we said all this is also made of the same 5 elements. So now we are looking at what is the oneness or identity between this Vyashti and the Samashti that we looked at. What is the identity between the Pinda, the individual, and the Brahmanda, the cosmos? And
Thank you.
giving away the climax, the identity is the same. That's what we're going to dive into further. Induji, do you have a question? I see you're unmuted.
No, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so entering the fourth section of Tattva Bodha on your page 18. Ata Aikya Vicharah
अथ ऐक्यविचारः
स्थूल शरीर बिम्बानि
स्थूलशरीराभिमानी
my bad, it's स्थूल शरीर अभिमानी
स्थूलशरीराभिमानी
जीवनामकम्
जीवनामकम्
ब्रह्म प्रतिबिम्ब भवति
ब्रह्मप्रतिबिम्बभवति
स एव जीवः प्रकृत्या
स एव जीवप्रकृत्या
स्वास्मातीश्वरम्
स्वास्मादीश्वरम्
भिन्नत्वेन जानाति
भिन्नत्वेन जानाति
अविद्योपादिसन्
अविद्योपादिसन्
आत्मा जीव इत्युच्यते
आत्मा जीव इत्युच्यते
मायोपादिसन्
मायोपादिसन्
आत्मा ईश्वर इत्युच्यते
आत्मा ईश्वर इत्युच्यते
Thank you. So it says Sthula Sharira Bhimani, the one who identifies with this Sthula Shariram is Jivanamakam. It is named, he's named as Jiva, and it is the same Atma which is named as Jiva. Brahma Pratibimba Bhavati is a reflection of Brahman. Saiva Jiva, this is the same Jiva who is confused by his own distorted reflection. Swasmat Prakritya, by his own natural ignorance. Ishwaram Binnate Binnatvena Janati. He looks at the Paramatma, at Ishvara, as different from himself. The Jivatma identifies with the body, ignorant of the fact that he is in fact the all-pervading, the all-powerful Atma. He identifies with the distortions and limitations of the mind-body complex, which we call upadi, limiting adjuncts. He, identifying with these, he thinks this is the real self. And this identification, this ignorance, is the cause of samsara, of all suffering. Author defines Jivatma, avidyopadisan atma jiva ityuchyate. Avidya, as we know, is ignorance, right? It is the karana shariram, so which includes hence the other two also. So because of avidya, this jiva identifies with these three bodies. So this jiva with this ignorance is reflected in the Shariratrayam and identifies with these. He's called a jiva. Similarly, the Paramatma or Ishvara is defined as Mayopadi San Ishvara ityuchyate. So the Jivatma not only gets confused about his own identity, but he also gets confused with the distorted reflection of the Paramatma or Ishvara. It is a more positive distortion. The Jiva thinks Ishvara is omniscient, omnipotent, is this magnificently beautiful thing, full of love. So he must be different from me. I have limited powers, whereas Ishvara has unlimited powers. I have limited knowledge, whereas Ishvara has unlimited knowledge. And hence, I worship Ishvara. As long as we are absorbed by these distortions, we will be confused. We will see duality. We will see these superior and inferior qualities in ourselves or in Ishvara. But what we have to realize, what Shastra is asking us to realize, is these superior or inferior qualities are mere distortions because of the reflecting medium. Just like if you go into a fun house with various mirrors, right? One mirror can make you appear tall, and another mirror can make you appear very short. One will make you appear fat, and another will make you appear really skinny. But these are all just mirrors in the playhouse, which are distorting the same image in different ways. Similarly, these reflecting mediums, be it this Thula Shariram or the gross universe, they are also distorting mediums, which are making us see ourselves, the Jiva, in a different way from Ishvara. This distortion is the basis of all Dvaitan philosophies. It is what makes us think Dasoham. I am the slave and Ishvara is the master. We have to move from Dasoham to Soham with Advaita. So the notion of this separateness arises when we give reality to the costume, reality to the reflecting medium. Right. So let's look at one image. But now, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so basically we're talking about the same original consciousness, right? So the same Brahman we call OC, original consciousness. And what we looked at in the Vyashti Vichara, when we looked at the microcosm, what we call Jiva, was the three bodies, the causal body, the subtle body, and the gross body. So let's call them, RM is, let's call them all reflecting mediums. So causal body is the reflecting medium 1, subtle body is reflecting medium 2, and the gross body is reflecting medium 3. So they're all like mirrors of this same original consciousness. And what are these reflecting mediums? The mirrors reflecting, they're reflecting the original consciousness. So when they reflect the original consciousness, what do you get? You get reflected consciousness. So we can call them RC1, RC2, RC3. So I'm just telling you these because sometimes later on we might just use the terms OC, RC, RM in passing. So you know what we mean. So by OC, we mean the original consciousness. By RM, we mean the reflecting medium. And RC, we mean the reflected consciousness. So we saw that there was different names given to these different reflected consciousness, right? The original consciousness reflecting in the Karana Shariram we call Prajna. The original consciousness reflecting in the Sukshma Shariram we call Tejasa. And the original consciousness reflecting in the Stula Shariram we called Vishwa. And so basically together, this Prajna, Tejasa and Vishwa together is what we call the Jivatma. Similarly, the same original consciousness is reflecting in the Karana Prapancha, and we give a new name now, we call it Antaryami. And when the same original consciousness is reflecting in the Sukshma Prapancha, we call Hiranyagarbha. You'll come across these names several times, but we're introducing them now for the first time. And when the same original consciousness is reflecting in the gross universe, we called Virat. So, right, your Antaryami is, we say we're giving this name to the Karana Prapancha, so you could use it synonymously with the unmanifest Maya, right? When that unmanifest Maya gives birth to this universe, this Sukshma universe, then it's called Hiranyagarbha. And then when it gives rise to the Stula Prapancha, it's called Virat. Okay? So there's nothing more to be known for this right now. You just have to remember these names and realize that then when we take these three reflections of the same original consciousness in the macrocosm, the Antaryami, Hiranyagarbha, and Virat together, this is what we call the Paramatma. But we're just looking at different mirrors. One is a smaller set of mirrors, and the other is a much, much larger set of mirrors. But they're all reflecting the same original consciousness. So when we talk about the Aikyam, one second. Any questions in that? I can share the image again if anyone needs. Question? Right. So basically, we're talking about how the same original consciousness reflects in these different mirrors and gives the notion of separateness. It is when the sun is reflecting in a mirror, once the reflection is formed, that mirror becomes very bright and luminous. And it has not only the capacity to just reflect the sunlight, but it becomes so bright and luminous, it can even brighten up an entire room. Yeah, there was suddenly a kid and a whole family which showed up. Can you hear all the disturbance in the background, or it's okay for you?
No, we are not able to hear it.
No,
Okay,
no,
great.
nothing.
Okay, great. I mean, because here I could hear it, but I'm wearing good earphones, so maybe that's why you can't hear it. Okay, sorry about that. So I was talking about the mirror, which becomes bright and luminous because of the reflecting sun, and becomes bright enough to even light up a whole dark room. And this is, of course, the mirror just borrowing the light of the sunlight. The room is not illumined by the mirror, it's because of the mirror itself, but because of that original sun which is getting reflected through the mirror. So similarly, when this Jada world appears sentient, or this Jada body appears sentient, is because of the reflection of that original consciousness, which is getting reflected in this reflecting medium of the bodies. And so it's that, and whatever we are perceiving, we are never able to perceive that original consciousness. Whatever we are able to perceive is always only the reflected consciousness. And so we have to always remember that the sentiency is a borrowed one. It doesn't belong to the bodies themselves. The life in the body is always a borrowed one. So the nature and size of these reflections will depend on the reflecting medium, as we saw. Of course, this reflection is so sophisticated that we don't realize that it's just a reflection. We think it is the original, but perception is not the reality. It reminds me of this. We've, of course, had this perception all our lives, right? So it is very ingrained in us, and it's natural to think it is the reality, but it is not so. So to give you an example of this, one of my friends, toddler, baby girl, who she was born during the COVID years. So a lot of relatives, she saw only, through video calls and such. So one day, they were trying to explain the concept of, and she was about, I think, 2 or 3, they're trying to explain the concept of big and small to her, like, and older or younger. So she asked, what about your sister? Is she big or small? And she said she's small. What about mama? She's big. What about papa? She's big. What about grandma? She's even bigger, And then they asked, what about this uncle, X, let's call him. What about Uncle X? And she's like, oh, he's very small, because for her, she's only ever seen this uncle on this phone screen. So for her, she thinks in reality, he's actually really very small, because that's the perception she's had through her life. So we are actually no different from that. We've held the same perception for a much longer time. So it's very hard to believe. But it's just a funny story to say that perception is not always reality. So we have to get over this sophisticated reflections, perceptions, and understand the truth that Shastra is revealing to us. The Jivatma the reflection is limited by the smaller size of this reflecting mediums and the challenges of the body. So hence we think we have limited knowledge or limited power. And the Paramatma, with this much bigger, sophisticated reflecting medium of the whole Prapancha itself, the body of the Ishvara is the whole universe itself. So we attribute all these superior qualities to Ishvara. So the body of Ishvara is this whole universe. The subtle and causal universe is the body of Ishvara. That is just one part. But the second part is that the all-pervading reflected consciousness which pervades the universe and makes the universe function in this organized manner, not just obeying only the natural laws, but all these moral laws of karma. All these are also Ishvara. So of course, it is right for us to appreciate Bhagavan in this way as for this creation, sustenance, and destruction principle that we observe around us. But this, in the end, when we dig even further, we realize that there is a oneness between both that we're talking about. So when we talk about oneness in Advaita, it doesn't mean we can't worship Ishvara, right? So Ishvara, as long as we are in this duality, we can still appreciate Ishvara. And even, in fact, enlightened beings, Shankaracharya, Ramana Maharishi, they wrote prose after prose in appreciation of Bhagavan. It is a reflection of yourself, but there is nothing wrong in being able to project this bhakti on what we call Ishvara or Bhagavan. To appreciate Bhagavan, we can just look at cosmology, or this billions of stars and planets which exist and how they all manage to move around at unthinkable speeds without colliding. Probably there are few of us who can drive, above 100 kilometers per hour without having an accident. But yet Bhagavan manages all these high speeds and amazing things with rarely ever any accidents, right? So not only is Bhagavan taking care of all these physical laws of the universe, but taking care of this entire law of karma, making sure that dharma and adharma are being managed, right? So this whole complex punyam and papam equation is being managed. So even if a lizard catches a fly, is basically punyam for the lizard, which is getting exhausted because it's able to eat, and papam for the fly, which is getting exhausted because it dies, right? So we see all these superior qualities of Paramatma or Bhagavan, and we see certain inferior qualities in ourselves. But in the end, the Brahman or Atma that we're talking about has no properties, no attributes at all. And this Brahman Atma appearing in the Jivatma or Paramatma is what these attributes belong to. They're distortions of that same original consciousness because of the distorting mediums. So when we talk about all this, you might be wondering, so are we saying Jiva and Ishvara are identical, or are they different? It is a very good question to ask. So from one angle, they are completely different. And from another angle, they are absolutely the same. What are those angles? So when we look at the reflecting mediums, from the reflecting mediums and the consciousness which gets reflected in that reflecting mediums, from that angle, they are completely, almost diagonally opposite, right? So because the reflected consciousness in this Jiva has all these limiting attributes that we talked about, like limited knowledge and limited power. And the same reflecting medium of Ishvara, which is this whole Jagat, will give all these superior attributes. So, but yet Shastra is telling us, Tattvamasi, thou art that. So how do you reconcile this equation? How do you reconcile that thou, this Jivatma, is same as that Paramatma. So you have to take away what doesn't make sense in that equation, which is the reflecting mediums. And then what you will be left with is only the consciousness. That is what we are equating. So that we will delve into further. But this whole samsara is actually because of this Beda drishti, because of this difference in our perception alone. That is what we are inquiring into. So let's chant. Evam upadi Beda
Evam upadi
Jiveshwara Beda drishti
Jiveshwara
Drishti
Yavat Pariyantam Tishtati
Yavat Paryantam Tishtati
Tavat Pariyantam
Tavat
Paryantam
Janma Maranadi Rupa Samsaraha
Janma Marnadi Rupa Sansara
Na Nivartate
Nani Vartate
Tasmat Karanat
Tasmat Karana
Na Jiveshwarayo Na Jiveshwarayo
Jiveshu
Veda Buddhihi
Beda Buddhi
Vikarya.
Svikarya
The author is telling us in this manner, as long as the perception of conclusion of difference between the individual and the Lord, which is wrought by the differences in these upadis alone, upadis are the limiting adjuncts, until such time this perception remains, then samsara in the form of birth, death, etc., does not come to the end. What is this etc.? It is the sukham, the dukkham, the trauma of all the shadvikara that this body goes through. All this is characteristic of samsara. The samsara will not end till such time this Beda drishti remains. This Shastra is asking us to understand that this difference we perceive is because of the upadi alone. And it is because of avidya, ignorance. And the author gives us advice on this Beda drishti. Tasmat karanat, therefore for that reason, jiva ishwarayoho, between the jiva and the ishvara, Beda buddhi, the conclusion of difference, nasvikarya, is not to be accepted. Why are human beings suffering? It's not because of things which happen to us or planetary positions. This all suffering is because of this distortion alone, because of this Beda buddhi alone. And we are like this person with a cataract wanting the room to become, the light in the room to be turned on brighter because we cannot see well, without realizing that the problem is actually internal and the solution is there internally, which has to be corrected. So what tells us that it's only this Beda drishti which causes samsara? Look at this, there's so much evidence around you, right? Why do the same things affect different people differently? When there is a death in the family, why certain people take it much harder than others? Some are not able to get over it at all for many years and years, but others are able to accept it and move on. So it's the same event which has happened. So it's not the event itself which is causing samsara, which is causing the sadness and dukkham. It is the perception of that event which is causing it, right? So there are so many things we always want and we think we'll be happy if we get it. Is that right? When we were kids in school, if you remember, and at least in India, there used to be a quote of Gandhiji, which was always there written. It says, when you are unhappy because you're not getting something you want, think of the poorest, saddest person you've ever seen and ask if the thing you want now will benefit that person in any way. And if you apply this, you will find that no, normally this thing that we want will make no difference to that one person that who comes to mind, right? So we wrongly attribute all our problems to external reasons, thinking if we get this or that, or if we're able to get rid of something, we will be happier, that the suffering will end. But all this suffering is because of this Beda Buddhi alone, because of ignorance alone. So hence we're being advised, Beda Buddhi na swikarya, do not accept this difference, do not accept this distance. Greater you perceive the distance between yourself and Ishvara, greater is the samsara. Lesser this distance, lesser is samsara. And the samsara disappears when there is aikyam, when you're able to accept the oneness between these two. So as long as this Beda Buddhi is there, you have to inquire. So Shastra has told you about this aikyam in a few ways in this text itself. We will talk about it, this aikyam, more as we continue with this section. And perhaps most likely this one text is not going to be enough to convince you of this aikyam, of this oneness. But as long as you're not convinced, you have to inquire. And you need to have Shraddha in this Abeda view that Shastra is giving you, and keep inquiring with the guidance of Shastra and a Sampradaya teacher. Indeed, it is hard to accept non-duality when perception continually reinforces the idea of duality. But every night in your dream, you see many things, but you know they're not different from me. Similarly, when you see these trees or mountains behind, it doesn't mean that they're different from you just because the perception says so. In the dream too, you see many sentient and insentient things, but they all belong to you. In the ocean, you see many waves, small and big, but the essence of all of them is water. We have to keep inquiring till such time we can accept this view of Aikyam that Shastra gives us. So we can stop here for today, and I can take any questions if there are any.
Namaste, Spandanaji. I have two questions
Yes, Rolly.
of the same topic. So I understand the spirit of oneness, but I have
I couldn't
to.
understand that. You understand the spirit of?
I said I understand the spirit of oneness,
Mhm.
but I have two doubts there. One is there no quantitative and qualitative difference in Jivatma and Brahman?
Absolutely, there
Or
is. Uh,
and the second question, so because the both are related, so I'm just putting both my questions. So one is that the quantitative and qualitative difference is there, and the second is since we are saying that the perception is creating all the dukkha, but we just discussed the whole process of creation and how the grossification makes the elements and how those elements makes us, and then there is this whole delusion that is created by upadhi. So there is something really happening there, which is hiding that truth from us. So there is a reality to this process which we just
mhm.
discussed. So how can it be just the perception? Like, I mean, because there's a physical limitation, there are limitations which we have to overcome to realize, experientially realize this truth. So how can we say that only the perception is creating this? Because
Right.
seems to be so much more
So
than the
I'll answer your
perception.
questions one by one. So your first question was, is there any difference? Like we said, yes, there is a difference, but in what? There is no difference in the consciousness itself. But we'll delve into this equation even more, but there is no, it's the same original consciousness which is getting reflected in both. But there is a difference which exists in the reflecting mediums. Right? So the Jivatma is operating with a smaller, limited reflecting medium, and Paramatma is operating with a much bigger reflecting medium. So there is a difference which exists in the reflecting mediums, and which is why in this level of duality reality that we are in, it is perfectly fine to worship the Paramatma as a Jivatma, because of there is a superiority because of the reflecting mediums, because of which we see the superior attributes of Ishvara. And it's perfectly fine to worship Ishvara and also, ask for Ishvara's grace and such. But this whole duality can only end, samsara can only end when you are able to look past the reflecting mediums and see the consciousness principle. So yes, we will dwell more at where does the difference exist and where the difference does not exist. But this is where what we're coming to. And this, why we talk about this whole process of creation, that was kind of part of your question, right? Because we have to inquire into what we think. So just like we inquired into what we think we are, right? So that was the one side of the equation. What I think I am, the Jivatma, we have certain perception. So like we kept saying from the beginning, it's not that we have complete ignorance about who we are. We have a confusion about who we are. Not only am I not thinking am I Brahman, I'm also thinking I am Spandana, which means Spandana, I'm Spandana, this name, I'm a daughter to someone, I'm an employee somewhere, I have black hair, I have brown skin, I know 3 or 4 languages that I can speak. I have this kind of personality. So I have a confusion about who I think I am, right? Which is why we talked about what is made up of this jiva, which is sitting on one side of this equation. And then I'm trying to equate what I actually am, understand what I really am, which is this all-pervading consciousness. And we have already assigned a post to who we think is this all-powerful, all-pervading being, right? So we think of that as God. Some might think of it as the natural laws which govern universe. But basically, we're trying to understand where we stand in equation to the whole. So we have a confusion also about what is this whole that we are looking at, which is why in the 3rd section, we inquired into this whole process of evolution, which tells us what is this whole, what is God, what is the world. And now we are trying to see where does the oneness exist. And when we say it's perception alone, and I'm giving you the dream example, do you remember the 3 levels of reality that we looked at? Were you there for that part?
Can you just, yes, I have heard all the,
So
like I have heard recordings, and can you just mention one thing from
Right.
there, then
So briefly, there's three levels of reality that we look at. One is the lowest level of reality being the pratibhashika satyam, relative level of reality,
yes,
which is
yes, yes.
because of perception alone. It's the realm of all our dreams, where a dream can cause only you or suffering, the dreamer suffering, right? And similarly, it can also be uh, all these things that we perceive in the universe. So, Gyanis, enlightened people, live in the same world as us, but they are not suffering. Why? Right? When you look at a particular object, say um, a rose, one person can be filled with a lot of love and happiness looking at that rose, and or because maybe their a boyfriend or girlfriend gave them this rose, so they feel a lot of happiness looking at this rose. Or and another person can pick up this rose, get pricked by the thorns of the rose, and feel only like disgust for the rose. So it's the same rose which is causing happiness to one person and unhappiness to another person. So what Shastra is telling us, that there is no suffering in this Ishwara Shrishti, in this creation created by Ishwara. There is no suffering. It is the Jiva Shrishti which causes the suffering. It is the perception of the Jiva which causes suffering. It's our likes and dislikes which cause this suffering. But this all, that is pratibhasika satyam. And then there is a transactional reality, which is both you and I share the same experiences. We're both looking at the same world, right? But there is still duality. This is because we're trying to understand this world of duality, which is why we talked about the evolution of the whole cosmos and evolution of these bodies and so on, because our perception shows duality. So that is where the level where you say Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. So the unchanging Brahman is uh, is the Satyam, and the whole Jagat is Mithya, like is Maya. It is like saying the example of the pot and the clay. So the whole pot is Mithya. If you see a clay plate, that is also Mithya. What is Satyam? It is the clay alone, which is the substratum, which is the Satyam. Right?
Just like one point here, like you mentioned earlier, that
Mhm.
in Advaita Vedanta, we don't say that this world is mithya or it's unreal. It is not unreal, it is just a dependent reality.
Yeah, we say the world is Mithya, but we don't say it's unreal. So we say the translation for Mithya
Yeah.
is not unreal, it is a dependent reality. But when we say this Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, that when we say this world is Mithya, we are talking about the transactional reality. So, okay, so we are still at the transactional reality. So you need, then you will come to the absolute reality, which is the Advaitic point of view, where we will say there is nothing Mithya, everything is Brahman, Sarvam Brahman. So
Yes.
that
Yeah. Okay. I
that's
mean, maybe in the coming classes it will be more clear because I'm still like not clear as to how just the perception is causing the dukkha because there I mean there something happened, like even if the reality is dependent, even if it is transactional, there is a reality which is causing uh, us to be in a certain state where we are experiencing dukkha. and then we have to go through a process to stop experiencing that dukkha and realize
Right.
the
So
reality.
when you're in the dream, doesn't the dream cause you suffering?
Yeah.
If there is a tiger chasing you in the dream, won't that tiger frighten you?
No, so that is what I'm saying. That it is not the perception for when I am in the dream. For me, that is real for that time. So
Right.
it's not just the perception; it is real for them, but
But
it
what
is
happens when
temporarily real.
what happens when you wake up from the dream? Will that tiger
Yeah.
still
Then I
scare you?
realized that it was a dream.
When you realize it was a dream, that it wasn't your actual reality,
Right.
right? It's only
Right.
because you identified as the dreamer, you got scared in the dream. But when you wake up and you realize I'm the waker, I'm not that dreamer, that whole dream just came from my own mind, that dream can no longer scare you. So Shastra is telling us this is also like a dream that when you wake up from, but you don't have to wait till the dream ends. You don't have to wait till pralayam, the destruction of the universe, to wake up from this dream. You can wake up from to your higher reality right now at any point and realize that I am not, so even if I'm not different from from anything else, right? So what is there to scare me? I am actually eternal. So even if the body dies, I continue. So why should I fear death?
Yes, I mean, that is what I said, that in spirit I understand this. Like, I understand the essence of it, that yes, like qualitatively I'm the same,
Yes.
but there are certain things like quantitatively I may not be the same. This is all that part also I have to really understand. And
So
also,
I'll stop you here, Rolly, because yeah, I understand your confusion, and that's what it will take time.
yes,
So
yes.
basically, the whole essence of Shastra is the same. It will, but it is we we keep thinking we understand, but we really don't. That's why Shastra keeps telling you that from the same message from different angles. So you will really understand it at some point, but right now we're at the stage where we think we understand. So contemplate on these things a little more, and as you continue with Shastra, it will become clearer and clearer. So it's already 9:15. So if anyone needs to go, please feel free. But if anyone has more questions, I can also take those. Okay. Right, then we can do the ending prayers. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Tat Sat. Thank you. Have a wonderful week,
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
everyone.
much.
Spandana ji.
Thank you.